Well, hi guys, welcome back to Linda's Pantry, and this is another Stocktober video. So, if you've followed me for any length of time, you know that I have a garden every year, and I have raised beds outside. We did a garden this year. I was able to plant and start from seed 12 Roma tomato plants, which I plan to be my preservation tomatoes. But I also planted cherry tomatoes and it's called the geranium kiss tomato. These are really good. They're like a patio tomato, so they're small. I wanted to test those out this year. I had some a couple heirloom tomatoes too, bigger tomatoes. And so I kind of wanted to go over what it actually gave us for the year. So here's what I'm going to tell you. The aromas have been unbelievable. This is just what we just picked. Well, my husband just picked this. These are tomatoes that are turning color. They have a little blush on them. And what happens is the ripe ones let off enough of the gas that ripens fruit they'll all ripen within a couple of days. I'll be making something again, and you'll have to excuse my dog. He's eating kibble. And so 12 Roma plants that I started from seed, and literally if you go back you can see the early videos this summer. They were little itty bitty plants. When I stuck them in the ground, I buried them as deep as I could get them. The one bed that had 4 and the other bed had 8. So out of literally 2 by 12 foot maybe, or 10 foot in square footage, that's what I grew, the 12 Romas. And I have been so impressed. And there's so many still out there that are green, that haven't even started changing. But once in a while, if you disturb the plant, you get a green one that falls. So we're not going to let it go. We're going to see if they'll ripen. If they come to full size, they'll ripen on their own. So when we get a threat of a frost, we're going to go ahead and pull them. But they're going to slow down now because it's not as warm. This is probably 5 or 8 pounds of tomatoes maybe. That's kind of what I had this weekend to work with. But I'm not wasting anything. My whole goal this year is not to waste, that I'm stocking up, I'm putting it back. And so this is how it went. I started with fermented tomatoes. We had quarts and quarts, and even a couple half-gallon jugs of cherry tomatoes. And I tried even some green. My husband loves the fermented green Romas. So we'll probably end up doing some of those. But we ate those fermented tomatoes like with every meal. We were having them on something or with something. So those are a win-win. I want to have them year-round. So I'll probably end up buying some cherry tomatoes for that. But long story short, when they really started coming on, I couldn't ferment enough fast enough and eat them fast enough. And I didn't want like my whole garage refrigerator full of fermented tomatoes. So I decided I'd make some sun-dried tomatoes. Look at these babies. Now these have been in the refrigerator, and I've noticed if you keep them in the fridge opposed to just on the shelf in the oil, they turn dark. But either way, they're delicious. Put them in your spaghetti sauce, on a pizza, anywhere you want that really intense sun-dried tomato flavor. This is it. But again, I didn't want jar after jar after jar filled with olive oil and sun-dried tomatoes, and that's my only option. So I started dehydrating tomatoes. And one of these jars represents about 8 trays. It's the dehydrator. You can put 4 trays of half Romas in there. So there's enough room in between. And then 8, you do it twice, you fill a jar. So literally more than what's in that bag right there, the green bag. twice goes in this jar after it shrinks down. Now they're salted. They are ready to go when I want to use them, whether it's for sun-dried or not. I will boil them in 1 cup of vinegar to 2 cups of water for about 40 seconds, and then they get that pliable but not mushy, pliable sun-dried tomato texture, and then I can use them in whatever I want. And the salt is rinsed off as well. So the last jar I haven't filled yet, so that's probably what's going to happen with these guys to fill this, and I'll have literally 2 gallons of dehydrated tomatoes to use however I need to. I can turn these into sauce, I can turn them into paste, I can turn them into anything. So then I moved to, well, I want to make canned whole tomatoes. So I did. I canned whole tomatoes. Beautiful. And these were stuffed, these jars, I made a video, these jars were stuffed full of tomatoes, but they soak up the water. This was not siphoning. This is what happens. They reabsorb more water because they're full of air as well as water. It is pouring down rain. I wish I could show you. Anyway, the rains have arrived up here in Washington. And so I got 7 quarts of these to use. I love having whole tomatoes in my chili or my spaghetti sauce because it just adds a different texture element. So then I thought, okay, now I'm going to do tomatoes in their own juice. And literally it's the same thing, except you smash the whole tomatoes down after you've peeled them and blanched them and all that. Or not blanched them, but you peel them, you crush them against themselves until they create their own juice to the inchy headspace. Well, epic fail. I've never had this happen, and I didn't share it at the time. I was going to share a video on it, but I didn't share a video, and I'm not sure what happened, but tomatoes are notorious for siphoning. When I got them out of the water bath, and let me see if I can find a jar that actually represents what I'm talking about. This will show you. So tomatoes, they expand when you're canning. Your product expands because of the heat in the jar. And your lids are venting and all that. Well, when they siphon, can you hear the thunder? When they siphon, we're going to have some problems here. When they siphon, they're pushing air out of the jar, but sometimes liquid. And in this case, you can see there's tomato product stuck right up under the seal, but these still sealed. I had literally 6 out of the 7 jars, no seal whatsoever. I've never had that happen in all the years that I've been canning, even when I was canning with my mom as a young woman, never. So that was not okay. And I was like, okay, so what do I do with that? I had one of these is the crushed tomato. That might have been it. Yes, so this is the crushed tomato one. These are the whole tomatoes. So this jar sealed, but you could see how it did. It siphoned, it pushed some product up under, but it's still sealed. It's got a great seal. It's been sitting since, September. So all the jars, and I periodically check my jars for seals. Every time you go, whenever I open one of my jar boxes, I tap on all the lids to see that they're making the same noise. So that's always good. But so was I going to waste that? No, I'm not going to waste it. I took and I canned, I didn't can. I vacuum sealed in the WeVac, which there's a link down below. It's a fantastic machine. I vacuum sealed those crushed or tomatoes in their own juice in here. And I've used a couple of them. I've made stuff with them. I've also made stuff with tomato sauce, the sun-dried tomatoes. Obviously, I'm using stuff as I'm going, but I wanted to bring you this. Then I decided I wanted to make tomato sauce. And I'm reading how you're doing it because I had never done tomato sauce myself. And on camera, and it had been a long time knowing you have to simmer it down and condense whatever you have to cook the tomatoes, mill the tomatoes, then cook that down overnight and until you reduce that product by half and you get this delicious tomato sauce. There's no seasoning in here. All there is that I added was citric acid to balance the acidity. It's unreal. And I can turn this into anything. I can turn this into pizza sauce, pasta sauce, just to have a simple marinara. It's endless what you can do with it. And so now, even this last weekend, I had a few tomatoes like this, and I canned up 3 more pints. Was it worth it? Absolutely. It didn't. It was no effort to me to mill those tomatoes down, cook them, mill them, and then let them simmer on the stove, overnight. So now we're at 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 pints of tomatoes to go on the shelf. And then I didn't waste anything from the first canning session. I dehydrated the skins and the seeds, and I made tomato powder. And I've already used this. This is fantastic. So I'm putting all of those tomatoes to good use. And this is off of 12 little Roma plants. So if you've got a little bit of space, you can create a lot of food. If all those dried tomatoes were in jars, this whole counter would be covered. Even if it's cooked down by half, it would be covered in jars of tomato sauce and or tomato products. And I still have 3 quarts of Bloody Mary mix from last year. I have marinara sauce. I have chili base that I use tomatoes for. I've got barbecue sauce. I'm still heavy in the tomato products. I'll probably still buy diced tomatoes, but I feel comfortable going into the winter months and next spring. We might run out by summer, but I feel comfortable about how many times I'm going to make a pot of stew and add crushed tomatoes or whole tomatoes, or how often I'm going to make maybe some pizza and have sun-dried tomatoes. I feel very confident knowing that I've got this on the shelf. And I really just wanted to share this and let you guys know this has been a great tomato year. Next year may not be so much. I've had years that I had 56 tomatoes and didn't feel as abundant. I didn't do any salsa this year so far. I did too. I did salsa. I did a big batch of salsa, but I took it to work. So endless supply of tomatoes off of just a few tomato plants. And I hope this inspires you to garden. Put in your fall garden and your winter vegetables right now. It's the time. And you'll be eating seasonally and enjoying at the peak of what they taste like right off the vine is unreal. And how it reflects in the sauce and in your tomato products is really, really gratifying. So I do hope it inspires you to Stocktober is the month to think about stocking your pantries. And I hope that you've done a good job and continue that into November. All right. Because we might be in for some stormy waters. You never know. All right. We'll see you next time for a delicious recipe, most likely using one of these beautiful tomato products. All right. Bye. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like this sort of content, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.